Good morning. Today, SCILET and the former students of the English department celebrate a teacher much loved and much revered, Professor R. Padmanabhan Nair. Fondly called Nair Ji or RPN, he was a teacher non-perennial. The memorial lecture has been planned to remind ourselves of the stupendous contribution of RPN to literary studies in this part of the world. His commitment to intellectual pursuit attracted generations of students to him like bees to a honey-laden flower. He was a text himself, offering himself completely to students. He was a sagacious guru, quietly watching his students grow. He was integrity incarnate. He was the source of literary reference and research for many students. It is our privilege to remember R.P. Nair, whose invisible presence gives us the impetus and the inspiration to continue the good work now. We will begin the program with a prayer song. Please stand.
I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me, and all my days have been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, and I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, and I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, and I will sing of the goodness of God. And I will sing of the goodness of God.
We are delighted to have with us the Principal and Secretary of the American College, Dr. Dingwaney Needham. He is the author of 3 books. He is also the recipient of the Best Principal Award from 3 different organizations, most recently from All India Association for Christian Higher Education, IIT, New Delhi. He is a syndicate member of the Madurai Kamaraj University. Sir, we thank you for all your support to SCILET activities. We invite you, sir, to welcome the gathering.
Good morning, friends. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this annual Professor R. Padmanabhan Nair Memorial Lecture event. We are indeed very happy that Nairji's family could join us. A special welcome to the members of the Aravind family. I am happy to welcome the students and teachers of the English department of the American College for this annual lecture event. A very hearty welcome to the members of Lakshmi School, Lady Doe College, Tyagarajar College, and Sri Meenakshi Government College. Friends, Professor R. Padmanabhan Nair, or RPN, or Nair Ji to many, was a much loved teacher and a friend. I congratulate the SCILET team and the students of Nair Ji for starting and sustaining this lecture series in honor of their legendary leader, legendary teacher, whose contribution to the growth of the American College has been phenomenal. Stalwarts like Nairji have created significant markers in the history of the American college, starting with making the autonomous status a reality for the college, upgrading the English department into the research center, starting and getting the renowned SCILET established on campus. The list goes on and on. Visiting accreditation teams have always acknowledged how the SCILET has enhanced the academic image of the college. Serving the college for 6 long decades, staying on after retirement to develop and sustain the SCILET for a quarter century without expecting any personal benefit is an unparalleled contribution of Nairji in the history of American college. In his 80s, Nairji had no reason to prove his commitment to the college. Nairji has never cared for titles, positions, or money. Together, Paulo and Nairji have established a collaborative work culture and have made volunteerism and team leadership a way of institution building. Nairji could be appreciative or critical of you without mincing words. I have valued his forthrightness and frankness. I have also admired his quiet firmness and sense of humor. I am delighted that the third R. Padmanabhan Nair Memorial Lecture will be given by Dr. Anuradha Needham, the most popular teacher in Oberlin College. Some of us have also enjoyed Anu's and Larry's hospitality in the Oberlin. She has always taken special efforts to give us the best of care and the best of home-cooked food whenever I have visited Oberlin during all 4 of my visits. I have particularly enjoyed the interior decoration in Anu's home. It was in the year 2003. She had taken special efforts to work on the amazing garden view from her balcony. Thoroughly inspired by her creativity, I attempted to replicate the same landscaping backyard view in my own house. Thank you, Anu. I have succeeded to a great extent. I am also very happy to welcome Dr. David Plotkin and his son Simon, who are here with us to reconnect with the American College. I hope you will enjoy your stay in Madurai and in the American College. The college administration cherishes the values Nairji stood for, the high standards he set for himself and his team by the power of example. To honor Nairji's memory, the reading room in SCILET was named our Padmanabhan Nair Reading Room. The college administration assures SCILET of continued support to take SCILET's unique initiative forward. I welcome the students of Paul-G, the students of Nairji, and I request you to use the occasions like this to visit the college and maintain your rightful relationship with the college. It's my pleasure to acknowledge the presence of the Vice President of the Board of Trustees of the American College and the alumni, Dr. Champion from United States. Thank you, Champion. And also the former professors are here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all. God bless.
Thank you, sir, for your welcome and words of encouragement and appreciation. Dr. Premila Paul, Director, SCILET, and former teacher in the English department, is someone who works relentlessly to create opportunity for students and Madurai's academic community to meet writers, intellectuals, and experts across various fields to initiate conversations that are important and inclusive. Her contagious passion for literature drives students to read with a critical and an analytical mind. She exudes main character energy whenever she walks into the room. We now request you, ma'am, to introduce the program.
Good morning, friends. This lecture series started in 2023. Like Dr. Paul Love, the Endowment Lecture Series is memory-driven. We are very thankful to the principal and secretary, the vice principal, and the Bursa for encouraging us to continue this lecture series. We are also very thankful to the heads of the English department for encouraging the students to attend the program. Team SCILET and students of Paul Love and Nair ji, we feel a strong emotional and ethical purpose in arranging this lecture series. This is not to proclaim our personal friendship. This is mainly to energize our work life and also to vitalize our value system. We see this as an occasion to record and celebrate the collective gratitude we feel for this iconic teacher. 6 long decades of selfless service to the student community and to the American college. This suggests that he can show us the way, continue to show us the way, and these also reveal to us possibilities of what a teacher-student relationship can be and what a teacher can continue to mean to the students. With the passage of time, with all of us advancing in years, the number of direct beneficiaries, we see that number steadily dwindling. The students of the 80s and 90s who have grown with the postgraduate English department, who have literally seen SCILET take shape from the start, they have all moved out to make their own living, knowing fully well that they have a home to miss, they have a home to return to in SCILET and in American college. We want to take advantage of their availability and their willingness to listen to the authentic and first-hand reports of the impact of Nair ji on the student community. All of us have favorite childhood teachers. We keep narrating a number of anecdotes over and over again, but not all teachers emerge as our mentors. Some teachers come into our lives as blessings. Some teachers come into our lives as lessons to help us deal with the hard knocks of life. For Nair ji, teaching is literally a devotion to the subject and also a devotion to the learners and a very deep respect for the curiosity of the students. Any time spent with Nair ji in the classroom or out of the classroom, that is sheer education. But Nair ji is no mythical figure, no special teacher brand. He was a simple, enthusiastic student. Nair ji always used to claim that he was blessed, thoroughly blessed, to have very demanding students. The more he gave, the more they demanded of him. And the more they demanded, Nair ji continued to give and help them raise questions over and over again. And they seemed to replenish the energy, teacher-learner learning process. If there can be doctors beyond borders, there can also be teachers beyond borders who are revered, valued, sought after even after their retirement. We know of many students who had enrolled themselves in consortium of colleges and universities, overseas students, and they all opted for a course on contemporary Indian literature that he offered semester after semester for credit. Anuradha Needham is also a very similar teacher, all giving, very demanding, a sought-after teacher and a speaker, even after her retirement. We are very delighted and proud and privileged that Anu agreed to give the RPN memorial lecture. They are in many ways very similar. In some ways they are very different. They are a deadly combination of gentleness and toughness, combination of flexibility and firmness. They never have ever projected themselves as role models to be emulated because they encouraged multiple ways of thinking, plural visions. Anu, even during her one visit, they had rented an apartment in Madurai. She had brought her son, sister, mother, who maintained a home for her when she gave a series of lectures in the PG English department on literary theory, and Larry gave lectures on Indian poetry. And all the people who have been to Oberlin, they all rave about the hospitality of the couple. Anu and Nairji, they could gel so well, mainly because of their extensive reading and also because of their deep interest, academic interest, in literature produced in the former colonies, the subject of secularism and also film studies. They could discuss books, films, storytellers, non-stop, with intense energy. The subjects that interested them the most, the first one was power and its consequences. The second main corollary subject was resistance. And this inspired animated discussions for hours. The legendary film personality Amol Palekar very recently published his memoir, titled it Viewfinder, and the dedication says, "To those who believe in the power of resistance." And that is Anu, that is Nairji. And both of them have been determined fighters, and they would not allow outdated, unjust academic practices to deter their spirit. In order to honor the spirit of Nairji, we inaugurated this series with T.M. Krishna, who gave a fascinating lecture on the spirit of dissent. It's a very highly vocal and irresistibly musical icon of resistance, powerful voice of humanity. Both Anu and Nairji were very good at connecting the students with celebrity writers, film personalities, and public intellectuals. They could bring them right to the classrooms and to the student lounge. Nairji brought Nisim Ezekiel, Kamala Das, Jayanta Mahapatra, Sashi Deshpande, and even David Shulman a number of times. And Anu could bring people like Edward Syed, Gayatri Spivak, Bell Hooks, and Salman Rushdie to the Oberlin campus. Nairji and Anu have never been publicity speakers, and the trappings that went with it never appealed to them. But the real reward that they got was the grateful love of the students. The Oberlin Shansi Association, with its motto, "Joining diverse worlds through educational exchange," became a vibrant platform for these advocates of interculturalism. The leaders like Peg Leonard, Carl Jacobson, Debbie Coco, Anuradha Needham, Gavin, Ted Samuel, they have all facilitated building of bridges across cultures, across countries and institutions. So in a way, this seems like an intergenerational mini Shansi gathering. We are so happy that David Plotkin, who was our Shansi fellow from 1988 to 90 could also be with us. He's an Indian literature enthusiast. He has been a provost. He has been in different administrative positions, and he has returned to us after 3.5 to 4 decades. And he has in turn influenced his son Simon to take up the study of Indian literature. And Anuradha Needham has inspired Donnie Harris into the reading of Indian literature. She has encouraged him to apply for this position, and also she wrote very strong recommendations for him. And Donnie has not failed her. He is trying to live up to her hope and expectations, and we are very, very happy that Principal Dr. Dingwaney Christopher, Anuradha Needham, Gavin, Paul Jaker, and Ted Samuel have helped revive this Oberlin Shansi program on campus. I would now let David and Donnie give their authentic accounts of Nairji's impact on David, David's impact on Simon, and Anu's impact on Donnie. We sincerely hope that this intergenerational, intercultural bond will continue to grow. Thank you very much for joining us in the celebratory event. We are so happy that so many of our friends from students of 80s, 90s are all here. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am, for your introduction.
It is double delight that we have friends from the Oberlin College with us today. Along with our guest speaker, Dr. Anuradha Needham and Dr. Larry Needham, we also have Dr. David Plotkin, an Oberlin Shansi Fellow from 1988 to 1990 at the American College. This memorial lecture also celebrates the lasting relationship between the Oberlin Shansi, the American College, and SCILET. Professor R.P. Nair built bridges across boundaries through teaching, learning, and nurturing cross-cultural bonds. Dr. Plotkin's presence here with us revives a memory and further strengthens this incredible bond between these institutions. Dr. Plotkin has served as the provost of Marylhurst University, Oregon, USA. He is now the vice president of Clackamas Community College. We invite Dr. Plotkin to share with us his precious memories of Dr. R.P. Nair.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Good morning. I am honored to be asked to be a small part of the 2025 R. Padmanabhan Nair Memorial Lecture. As you were told, I was an Oberlin Shansi Fellow from 1988 to 1990. It is also an honor and privilege to speak on the same program as Dr. Anuradha Dingwaney Needham, Longman Professor Emerita in English and Cinema at my alma mater, Oberlin College. To be frank, it is nerve-wracking to speak in front of an Oberlin English faculty and in front of all of my friends from American College. It is like one of those anxiety dreams where you are transported back to school and asked to take a test for which you don't feel prepared. I hope to represent my alma mater at least respectably. I'll speak briefly on 3 themes: memory, literature, and gratitude. Memory and literature, because this occasion is a memorial lecture about literature sponsored by SCILET. Gratitude, because it is being held here at the American College. I owe thanks to many, many people, wonderful people that I met at the college, some who are present in this room today, some who are no longer here physically, but they are here and here. In particular, Nairji. He's here. Indeed, this is surreal, dreamlike. I feel like a time traveler in my own life. Memory has a way of twisting time. In my mind and body, I cannot believe it has been 35 years. I feel so much like that shy, awkward 24-year-old who arrived at this place wanting to learn, needing to learn, indeed, needing to be schooled about the world. But of course, when I look in the mirror and I see the thinning hair and the gray beard, I know that I'm reminded of all that lost time. Before I came many years ago, I did my best to learn about India, mostly through reading, history, cultural commentary, novels. One novel in particular was then and continued to be very significant to me, Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. This is ironic. I sought out this novel intending to read it precisely for the reasons that Rushdie himself said Western readers should not read his novel. He chided us that it was not intended to be a tour guide, a Fodor's or Lonely Planet guide to India. Unfortunately, it continues to be true of many Western readers who approach Indian literature in English. They see these works as textbooks or the key to understanding another place or culture. However, like most great works of literature, this novel, Midnight's Children, taught me how I should read it. It reminded me that all tellers of tales are unreliable about facts, but literary works, art, may give us pieces of, glimpses of truths bigger than our fractured selves. I went on to write my master's thesis about the novel, motivated by my encounters with the founders of SCILET, R.P. Nair, Paulji, Pramila. In that work, I included this quote from Rushdie's essay, Imaginary Homelands. Human beings do not perceive things whole. We are not gods, but wounded creatures, cracked lenses, capable only of fractured perceptions, partial beings in all senses of that phrase. I will linger on those words, partial beings, partial because we are never complete, and partial because we are all biased. We all see from our own position a particular slant that is never objective. Rushdie continues, meaning is a shaky edifice we build out of scraps, dogmas, childhood injuries, newspaper articles, chance remarks, old films, small victories, people hated, people loved. Yes, at our best, people loved. I apologize for my autobiographical turn. It seems to me egotistical. But what I understand, the meaning I make of this world, is through the cracked lens of my own life. Great novels, plays, films, poems help us with our meaning making. More than that, they can open us up, they unlock us, unlock parts of us so that others, other voices, other images can enter in and change us. We still remain partial, jumbled, a mishmash per Rushdie, but maybe we also become larger with a bit more understanding of other lenses, other ways of being. In a world now so darkened by hate, That is an important hope for me. It is why institutions like SCILET are so very, very important. Great people, even more than great works of literature, do that as well. They open us up. They enlarge ourselves. So now I finally come to the point, to the debt of thanks that I owe. 35 years ago, I came to Madurai knowing that I cared about literature. Through the founders of SCILET, I learned about devotion. Nayaji and Paulji and Premila demonstrated such an amazing commitment to scholarship and learning. I came here thinking that I wanted to be a teacher. And Premila talked about this very well. Nairji was a teacher I could aspire to. I could try to emulate. Quiet, reserved, but so caring and kind. It is the relationship between teacher and student that is crucial for learning, built on trust and respect. He showed me that. And he mentored me, gave me opportunities, saw something in me that I did not see in myself. I will always be grateful. I left Madurai committed to earning a doctorate in literature and persisted despite opposition and doubters. I was inspired by so many here, Nairji especially. I was only here for 2 years, and those years transformed me, changed me into a better person, a bigger person, more committed, less afraid of life, more able to listen, more focused on others. Let me leave you with a memory, which is really a compilation of memories. It is also a trope, a metaphor of my experience of India. I am sitting next to Nair. I say something. Maybe it was funny, most probably it was very foolish. And he turns to me and flashes a smile. Literally a smile that leaps on his face. A smile that is wide, inviting, gracious, forgiving, and so very full of warmth. It is immeasurably significant to me that I am able to say publicly here, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing with us the transformative experience that you had as an Oberlin Shansi Fellow through your memory literature.
Donnie Harris graduated from the Oberlin College and Conservatory in May 2023 with a bachelor's in politics. Presently, he is the Oberlin Shansi Fellow at the American College. As part of his duties, Donnie advises students and occasionally faculty on matters such as professional development and academic writing, hosts on-campus programs, and guest lectures among various college departments. Additionally, Donnie works closely with the wonderful team at SCILET and collaborates with this year's Creative Writing Workshop student cohort and affiliated faculty. Overall, he is the big teddy bear of the American College who lends a helping hand to students whenever he can. I invite Donnie to introduce and share some of his thoughts about his teacher, friend, Dr. Anuradha Needham.
Hopefully, no one saw that very ungraceful entrance on my part. I wanted to second what David Plotkin just said. It is very surreal standing in front of faculty and my former advisor, my friend. Whew. So hopefully, I can do you justice in a short amount of time. So, Professor Needham, I could go on about her accomplishments all day, but I want to focus on the personal side of who she is as an educator and a mentor. Professor Needham, as many of her friends and colleagues also may know her as Anu, plucked me kind of out of a nest of confusion as a first year in college. For my first semester, I was surrounded by upperclassmen, third years and fourth years, studying literary theory, Althusser, Gramsci, all of it. If you know, you know. But even though I was surrounded by all of these students who were excellent at inquiry and debate and literary analysis, and I never saw any of them really pick up a pen or paper. They felt like professionals. But in Anu Needham's class, everyone is equal. And so for me, as a first year, it was very interesting to kind of observe that everyone, whether you were a first year or a fourth year, were expected, of course, to do the reading, but also to be sincere in your answers. You didn't have to be eloquent. You didn't have to be the most profound, but you had to be sincere and honest in whatever your conviction was. And with that, we were often challenged. We were met with, oh, why? What makes you say that? Or, in my case, oh, I had a very different reading than that. So, with that, it was a challenge. And I'm sure Anu could tell you how many times I fell asleep during movie screenings, or how many times she found out that maybe I didn't do the reading from yesterday. But, like I said, she was never cruel. If you didn't do the reading and you simply said, I don't know, that went a long way in her class. I think being one of her students actually taught me the importance of admitting your limitations and knowing when to say, I don't know. Whenever we come into a new opportunity in life, it could be college, it could be work, we often feel like we have to be the first one to answer instead of asking things, or just admitting, I don't have an answer for that. So I think for me, that is one of her most important qualities as an educator. She allows you to ask questions, to challenge, and also to just say, I don't know. And in that way, she treated everyone with respect. And being, like I said, 19 years old by the end of my first year, having a tenured professor and a dedicated scholar in her own right treat me like an adult, it affected me both professionally, academically, also, personally. It taught me to just be honest as I can be. I think the students that often fared very well in her classes were the ones who gave an honest answer and said, listen, I got to page 57. I can tell you what happened at page 57. Beyond that, I don't know. And you get a kick on the rear every so often. As a student being advised by Professor Needham, she'll tell you this too. I was always in a crisis. I feel like that's never changed. I'd show up to her office, probably sweaty, probably about to cry. She's like, Donnie, calm down. That's not for 4 more years. You don't need a job right now. And she would send me on my way. And it's that same hospitality that was exhibited both in her home. We had a seminar course where we read Salman Rushdie, that's it, for a whole semester. And she had us in her home, a group of 9 students. She would feed us, we would have coffee and tea, and the winters in Ohio are brutal. So that coffee, that tea, that warmth meant a lot. And she was hospitable in her work. That goes without saying. Anyone will say, well, actually, PP put it perfectly. She is a deadly combination. I can't remember if it was firmness and generosity, but that's what I'll say. That is spot on. And I don't know, it's come full circle. You know, I was hundreds of miles away from home when I went to college, and here I am again, thousands of miles away from home. But this time, I'm addressing her. So, thank you. And that's all I'll say. I just want to, before I take up any more time, but I want to welcome not only a scholar, but a friend and a very trusted person. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie, for introducing and sharing about Dr. Anuradha Needham's impact on you. We bring to you a 5-minute video prepared by David, a distinguished alumnus of the English department, and Bavitra of SCILET to introduce the program. Now we invite Dr. Anuradha Needham to give the third R.P. Nair Memorial Lecture.
I cannot think of a more distinguished occasion and a more honored one to give this lecture. R.P. Nair was, of course, a dear, dear friend, and I cannot even begin to think how I could compete with his knowledge and his enthusiasm, his vast experience of teaching and advocacy for a place like SCILET. But I'm deeply honored. I'm deeply, deeply honored. And I want to begin by saying just a few words about Mr. Nair before I thank the others for all the things they have said. It's an enormous pleasure and privilege to be asked to give Nair Memorial Lecture. Mr. Nair is an important part of my intellectual journey and was a generous friend and colleague who, with Premila and Paul Love, provided some of the most compelling reasons to come to Madurai. Through SCILET, they provided a valuable and lively venue for both conducting and presenting my research, meeting their students and colleagues, and wonderful lavish meals. I would have much preferred to give this talk with Mr. Nair present in his familiar role as an engaged and much valued interlocutor. Instead, I will do so in his memory. Before I move on to that, however, I want to say I'm absolutely delighted with the image that has been presented of me in all the remarks prior to the lecture. I don't recognize myself in them, but I am more than happy to claim everything that has been said as my own. So thank you very much, and thank you, Principal Dalavan Christopher. I thank Premila, with whom the original conversation began, and I thank Jewel, I thank Donnie, I thank Ebenezer, I thank all the people who have been so welcoming and so hospitable. Thank you very much. I recognize faces of people who have come and visited Oberlin, and I'm so delighted to see them again. Shamala is sitting right here in front, so I hope you'll enjoy it. Yes. So I want to give some context to the talk I'm going to give today. About 6 years ago, I started working on a project on a Fulbright that I came to India for. And the project had to do with wanting to recuperate the representations of female-centered movies of the 50s and 60s. The common sense has been that there is no female-centered movies of that time. It's all a function of the new, parallel cinema and of the streaming services and things like that. I never agreed with it, and I wanted to start recuperating it. I want to tell you why I never agreed with that image, and maybe it will speak to, if not the young students who are here, to some of the people in my generation or of my generation. When I was growing up in Agra in the 50s, every Friday there was a new film released. My family is passionately fond of watching films, so we would go to watch these films. And they would choose the films they wanted to see based on not the actors, not the matinee idols like Devanand and Raj Kapoor and Dilip Kumar, but on the actresses. People like Waheeda, Rehman, Meena Kumari, Madhubala, and Nargis, and Nutan. And they would always talk about those films as if they were films about women, that the men didn't count at all. Which is why it's very curious that that is not how people remember those films. They remember them as patriarchal constructs that are oppressive for women, and I have a quite different understanding of it. So I started thinking, let me work on this. Let me see why my memories don't quite match the way people talk about this cinema. And I had realized that Surprise, surprise, I'm right, they were wrong. So, and the reason I say this is because now slowly there is a body of work emerging where you have people looking at the cinema of the post-independence years from the 50s onwards, which is actually called the golden age of Indian cinema, and looking at the studio structures, the female directors, people like Jadnan Bai, Nargis's mom, studio personnel, who held quite a lot of significant sway. Who held significant sway over the way films were made, who acted in them, who was important whose stories were important. And that work is starting to get done by a very wonderful young scholar whose name is Debashri Mukherjee. And then there is work being done on the romance narratives of that cinema of the 50s and 60s, particularly about the songs, where Indian modernity is tracked through the trope of romance. And women are very important there because most of the women in those films are transgressive. They make choices that are separate from what their parents would have made for them. They all end up having arranged marriages, but before they do that, they have the opportunity to grow to love the person. So I'm thinking of films like Solva Saal and others. So what I'm trying to suggest is there is work now beginning to be done where 50s is being seen, the 1950s and 60s are being seen as a time which was not inhospitable to women's films. The other thing I want to sort of bring up is that what you also must recognize is there were very famous actresses during this period. People like Waheeda Rehman and Nutan and Madhubal, I'll repeat the names, and you have to ask yourself, why would they allow themselves to be sidelined completely in films? Very often they got the primary credit for the film. They often starred in women-centered stories. So I started selecting films that dealt with women-centered themes and that then focused almost insistently on a particular kind of Indian modernity that Nehru made possible, where you had the primary sort of image was that of the working woman, the woman who was mobile and out there in the public doing things. I will think about Nargis in a film like Andaz. You all may or may not know. She's a lawyer, and they were all professional women. Some of them were streetwalkers, but they were public women. They were always negotiating space publicly. And that was a particular kind of Indian modernity that was being forged, that Indian cinema was representing, but people don't talk about it. They still talk about patriarchal cultures, And I'm interested in that kind of cinema that's being produced at that time. And I'm not content to say that only now do you get taboo subjects examined or transgressive portraits of women. You're getting them at that time. It's just that nobody thinks about them because the film is a kind of masala film, with songs and dances, so you lose track of the story that's being told. And I'm going back to particular moments in those films to see where we can find the kind of modern woman that's turning up in those places. So today I decided, since I'm working through actresses right now, I finished my chapter on Meena Kumari. Now I'm moving on to Waheeda Rehman. So you are my guinea pigs for this lecture. This is the first time around. I said to Premila, I'd like to come and give a lecture. She said, sure, come. And I said, but it has to be on Waheeda Rehman. And she said, anything. And then we started talking, and I said, there is a connection with the South. She began her career in the South. She began her filmic career in the South. And then I said, I'm writing about Guide, which is, of course, an R.K. Narayan novel. So I said, that is another connection. So that was enough for her to allow me to give this talk today, correct? Okay. So that is part sort of the background I want to specify. In terms of some of the words in the title, I want to make sure that I highlight some of the contexts that I'm looking at. What my talk is mainly going to be about today is what are the things I look for in the film in order to then talk about how women are imagined. So one of the things I look at are the industrial features of the film. Who's producing it? Which studio is it coming out of? Who are the directors? Who are the people presenting these women? So in the case of the film Guide, I think it's very important that it comes out of the Navketan house, right? I don't know how many of you know this. Maybe the names are familiar. Navketan was the studio run by three brothers, Devanand, Chetananand, and Vijayanand. They were directors, they were actors, they wrote screenplays, it was a particular kind of house, a particular kind of studio. It was cosmopolitan, very committed to an idea of Indian modernity through the idea of the modern woman. You know, in a lot of their films, you have women who run away from arranged marriages, who dress up as men, and then they go around with men. You know, for example, in Taxi Driver and in Nodo Gyara, there's a whole host of films they made where the woman is released from her familial circle. So she's not in the traditional sort of setup. She gets to escape, even though eventually she'll come back into her family, but the whole film is about the time she's away. And she is interacting on her own, independently, and in a modern fashion with young men. And they begin off sometimes being dressed cross-dressing, and then the male figure discovers, oh my, it's a woman, and you have to be, separate. But then it doesn't matter because she has already crossed the boundaries in some ways. And so I think there was a particular kind of energy that Navketan generated. I'm going to read this bit on Navketan because it tells you much more than I could say. So the Navketan brand, owned by the Anand brothers, Chetan, Dev, and Goldie, in a piece called Cosmopolitan Dreams, Ranjani Majumdar draws attention to a specific kind of modernity exemplified in Navketan films, especially through its representation of women who are often presented as adventurous with a mobility that marks them as different. Navketan, she says, set the style of the talented young woman of independent spirit, a sophisticated assessment of women on the left bank of society, the bohemian or dropout who gave herself the right to command the respect, if not to win the heart of the hero. Similarly, in a 2017 blog, one of the young women remarked, the blog is called The Navketan Ladies. The female characters in that is Devanand's films, were fully fleshed out characters. They might be keepers of his character's conscience or the beacon of hope, but they got to be lively, nuanced characters on the screen. Nearly all of the heroines in his film were strong, independent women. More importantly, the Navketan heroines were also allowed to be confident women, comfortable with their sexuality. For the Anand brothers, women were more than just mothers, sisters, and wives. They respected them as individuals, and the worldview was reflected in the films they made. So I want to emphasize that partly I get at the question of how women get represented in these films through the studios which are making the films, through the directors who are producing these films, and looking at their oeuvre to see what is it that they make possible in our view of these. Recently, Waheeda Rehman, as you know, she is a very distinguished, gorgeous-looking woman who gives a lot of interviews. In a recent interview with Anupam Kher, she spoke about her liberal family. She said even though she came from a Muslim family, she was allowed to perform publicly, dance. She learned classical dancing, and she did public performances. And this is from a Muslim family in the south. She grew up close to Hyderabad. And so I was saying to myself, she has never spoken about this, but now she's emphasizing her family's modernity, which means, and then in that aspect, she sort of highlighted Guide as the film that she sort of thinks of as one that distinguishes her as a modern character. Basically, I come at it that way now because Guide, the film, is an adaptation from a book by R.K. Narayan. I had to contend with the book. I wanted to see what is it that the film does that the book doesn't do, and vice versa. Because I don't know how many of you know this, but R.K. Narayan hated the film. He absolutely hated it. He thought it was, he thought it did not present the novel he wrote. And his main quarrel with it was that it made a villain out of the husband that she leaves, and that it changed the locale from Malgudi, which is his invented area, to Rajasthan, and made it a tour. He thought they made it into a tourist attraction. So he was very distressed with the film. But if you read the book and you watch the film, there isn't a whole lot of difference. They still tell the same story. I don't know how many of you got to see it. Most of you may not have, so I'll just repeat the story quickly. For those of you who are not familiar with the novel or film, particularly it relates, as it relates to the film, I say both the novel and the film have Raju, who's a fast-talking, self-promoting guide, as his protagonist. Both track his meeting with Rosie and her archaeologist husband Marco, and their growing romantic his growing romantic relationship with Rosie, whom he helps free herself from the tyrannical and self-absorbed Marco and an oppressive, lonely marriage, while also helping her express her passion for dancing, a passion she has acquired as daughter of a Devdasi, but had to forego because her mother wants her to become a respectable person. So her mother encourages her, discourages her from dancing and learning dancing, and encourages her to become respectable through marriage with this archaeologist, who, by the way, marries her because he just needs a woman around. He doesn't care one way or another whether she's respectable or not, but he reminds her many, many times how he has made her respectable. So then what happens is, Raju has this affair with Rosie, makes her into this very popular celebrity performer, but also gets very jealous of her popularity. Even though he encourages her first, he gets jealous of her popularity, and he wants to retain the money that she's bringing in. So he forges her signature on some papers and ends up in jail. So the film actually spends quite a lot of time, as does the novel, on his career as a saint. He becomes a saint, and the village people start teaching him treating him as a guru, and so on and so forth. But the story that interests me is the story of Rosie. And that's why I call it a film of her own, because it's almost as if it's Waheeda's story or Rosie's story has to be ignored in order to, but the film is very careful about letting that story count. And that's the story that I focus on. So I go on to say, both the novel and the film engage with the taboo or transgressive extramarital relationship of Rosie's with Raju. The novel more matter-of-factly than the film, which foregrounds the villainous aspects of Marco and Indian patriarchy to my, and we'll show that clip right now. Can we see that clip? It's clip number 7.
जी मार के जीना अगर जीना है तो जी रहे हैं, लेकिन तुम्हारे पास जैसा तुम्हारा काम है, मेरे पास क्या है?
औरत के पास क्या होता है? उसका घर
पति से होता है, घर होता है बच्चों से।
इसमें मेरा क्या दोष? अगर भगवान नहीं चाहता तो मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ?
मैं तुम्हें दोष नहीं दे रही हूँ मार्को, लेकिन मैं किस उम्मीद पर जीऊं? दिन भर बैठे क्या सपने देखा करूं, रात भर जाके क्या सोचा करूं? बच्चों का सुख नहीं तो कुछ तो सुख आने दो मेरे जीवन में।
सुख सारा सुख अगर नाच गाने में ही रखा था तो छोड़ा क्यों माँ का घर?
माँ का घर छोड़ा कि पति के घर जाऊंगी? क्या मालूम था वहां न घर होगा न पति।
तो चाहती क्या? सारे काम काज छोड़कर तुम्हारे बालों में फूल सजाता रहूं।
फूलों से नफरत थी तो फिर शादी क्यों की?
सर पर मुसीबत रखने का शौक था, इसलिए शादी
शौक
की।
नहीं, जरूरत थी। एक हार्ड मास की पुत्री की जरूरत थी तुम्हारी हवस को।
ये क्या गंदी बातें हैं?
ये बातें तुम्हारी गंदी हरकतों की।
मेरे प्यार को हवस कहती हो तुम?
और तुम अपनी हवस को प्यार कहते हो? तुम्हें पत्नी नहीं औरत चाहिए, चाहे वो कैसी भी हो। इसीलिए तुम्हें मुझसे ज्यादा अपना बिस्तर प्यारा है, क्योंकि वो तुम्हारी थकान मिटाने के बाद कोई मांग नहीं करता। तुम आज भी नहीं वैसी हो।
कहाँ जा रही हो?
तुम्हें इससे मतलब?
मेरी इजाजत के बिना तुम कोई ऐसा वैसा काम नहीं कर सकती।
अच्छा
रोजी, आखिर मेरा तुम पर कुछ अधिकार है?
है?
तुम कैसे भूल सकती हो कि मैंने तुम्हारे लिए क्या क्या किया है? अगर मैं ना होता तो क्या होती तुम?
वही जो होने जा रही है।
ये मैं नहीं होने दूंगा। कोई भी लफंगा बदमाश आवारा 58 रुपया बाजार में फेंक कर जब चाहे मेरी पत्नी का डांस देख सके और उसके बाद हंसता हुआ मेरे नाम पर कीचड़ उछाले, ये मैं नहीं देख सकता।
नहीं, कोई बात नहीं, तुम्हें देखने पर कोई मजबूर नहीं करेगा।
मुझे बताओ ये किसकी है? किसने भरे तुम्हारे कान? किसने भड़काया है तुम्हें? ऐसी कौन सी नई बात हो गई जो मेरे दिए हुए आराम को छोड़कर तुम्हें कलियों की ठोकरें खाने से डर नहीं लगता?
सोई थी, आंखें खुल गई।
और कोई बात नहीं? मुझे बताओ, मैं जानना चाहता हूँ। और कोई वजह है क्या? कोई दूसरा आदमी तो नहीं?
हो भी सकता है।
तुम्हारा मतलब तुम किसी और के साथ?
मैं बेवफाई करूंगी माँ को तो खुलेआम, काम का बहाना करके कहीं दूर घने जंगल में छुप कर नहीं।
तुम मुझ पर तोहमत लगा रही हो?
तो
मुझ पर शक कर रही हो, मुझे बदनाम कर रही हो। मुझ पर झूठे इल्जाम लगाकर ये मत समझना कि तुम्हें बच्चन बनने का बहाना मिल गया है।
और कुछ
सुनना ही चाहती हो तो मेरे मुंह से भी सुनती जाओ। मैं एक दिन को भी नहीं भूला कि तुम्हारी रगों में खून कैसा है। मैंने तुमसे शादी करने का पाखंड किया तो पूरी तरह ये जानकर कि मैं तुम्हें अपनी जरूरत के लिए खरीद रहा हूं। तुम जैसी औरतों को अगर ये धोखा है कि तुम किसी शरीफ आदमी की धर्मपत्नी बनने के लायक हो तो तुम जैसी बेवकूफ और कोई नहीं। एक बात और सुनती जाओ, मुझे तुमसे नफरत है, नफरत है, नफरत है, नफरत है। तुम जाओगी तो तुम जैसी हजारों आएंगी। जाओ, निकल जाओ अभी यहां से।
So there are a lot of, I know the register is melodramatic, but there are a lot of important themes that this scene gives you access to. There is a kind of binary opposition set up between respectability and the performing woman, right? And he, of course, wants to make sure that she understands that he made her respectable and her blood is otherwise tainted by the Devdasi's blood. And the film, not so much the novel, but the film is here capturing a whole history of the way in which the performances were transferred from the expertise of the Devdasis, in this case, into the hands of a respectable middle class. So it sort of encapsulates the history, but it does so by neither rejecting respectability nor rejecting the Devdasi tradition. So, for example, the Rosie character will keep alive the notion that she is the daughter of a Devdasi. For her, it's very, very important. And she tracks her love of dancing as something that is part of that, quote, tainted blood. Whereas, so she, in a sense, is rejecting the middle class option of the respectable middle class, of the respectable performer, but she becomes popular as a star through that identity as middle class performer. So Raju will change her name from Rosie to Nalini, because Nalini is a more Sanskritized Indian name. And what you see is the film tracking that, but not rejecting either. So even as she makes money through her performances, her Devdasi genealogy is kept intact. And I think that is a very important gesture the film makes, because if you see films like Pakiza and others, the woman must reject that background in order to enter the space of respectability. Guide doesn't do that. And I thought that was a very important moment to track in the film. So what you get is, Marco is the one who's the villain here. If you watch the film, there is no way that you sympathize with Marco. It is, your sympathy is always on the side of Rosie. And Narayan was very upset at this because he had made Marco into a sort of professional archaeologist who was doing his business. He didn't make any judgments about Marco. Certainly didn't try to show that he was an oppressive figure. The film makes him an oppressive figure because the film wants to make sure that you understand Rosie's rejection of a particular worldview that Marco brings with him, of respectability, of middle class culture, and so on and so forth. The crucial change, and this is very, very important to my analysis, the crucial change the film makes is the whole of the novel is told in a variety of viewpoints. Some of it is from Raju's viewpoint, some from an omniscient narrator, and so on and so forth. The bulk of the film is Rosie's story. What you get is the first few scenes, Raju leaving the prison after he has been let go, then the mother and Rosie arriving to pick him up, and they're told, oh, he's gone. And Rosie says to Raju's mother, let me take you home. And the mother says, no, I don't want to talk to you. You helped in losing my son, and so on and so forth. And she says, let me explain to you what happened. And so the bulk of the film is Rosie's story. And I think that makes an enormous difference. Because on the one hand, what you get is a form of explanation for her behavior. But what you also get is an exploration of her subjectivity, of her interior landscape, because she sets out why Raju's help was so important to her, but that she also brought something to the table. She gives Raju all his credit, but she doesn't leave herself out of it. And I thought that made such a huge difference in the way you see the film, because even though the film is about Raju and his becoming a Swami, we are also getting a story about Rosie, how she becomes an independent woman. Some with Raju's help, but a lot of it through her own energy and thinking through her. So that I thought was a very, very important moment. So I say, centering Rosie's story, which forms the bulk of the film tracks a double Bildungsroman of Rosie and Raju and Rosie / Nalini as they become specific kinds of national subjects. Those of you who have done reading on cinema, especially of in the post-independence years, a lot of the films are seen as national allegories, that the story of the characters being told is actually the story of the nation. What I'd like to suggest is the film here does that. So Raju is a certain kind of national figure in the making, but so is Rosie. And I'll mention this not because I can show you the scenes, you'll just have to take my word for it, but what happens is Raju as guide interacts with a diversity of people in India. So he's seen as someone who comes in contact with many people, he uses many languages, many accents, so that the India that emerges from Raju is a polyglot India. And then you have Rosie, her dance performances are always set against a national backdrop. So you have these scenes of her dancing, with the backdrop of forts and palaces and so on and so forth. So partly what I'd like to suggest is the film is saying, if Raju is the national subject in making, so is Rosie. And they're both modern subjects. And in order to do that, you have to actually pay attention to how the visuals of the story are managed. Now I want to turn to, and this was almost at the end of, I had mentioned that the film never dismisses or derides Rosie's expertise as coming from the Devdasi figure. There's a scene which I'm going to show you right now. It's a snake dance. And it's interesting because the American version of the film took it out. They didn't want it, but Vijay Anand kept it. And she asks Raju, Raju has taken her around, and she says, "Can I watch a snake dance?" And he takes her, and I want you to watch her expression and the expression of the woman who invites her, so that she moves organically into the dance itself. And it's shown as if she already knew how to enter that world of public performance, even before she enters it in a sense. So that is, I think, four clip, wait, I'll tell you. It's clip 4.
नाग नृत्य करती हो?
So partly what I want to suggest is that the film has a lot of performances by her in public places where she works with a crowd, and yet there is no effort to sort of mark those as negative moments. In fact, if you notice, she was on screen more than anybody else. Raju is simply a side look. He's sort of waiting on the margins. The last thing I want to turn to is how song done. It's a much derided aspect of Hindi cinema. Everybody says, oh, Hindi cinema is so trashy. Look at how many songs they have, how many dances. And it is, even as it identifies Hindi cinema, it also is a source of, so you will see, for example, parallel cinema will very seldom have song sequences. Or now when the effort is always to have music and song as background, not as actual elements of the cinematic experience. And yet I would like to suggest that the song is performing a very particular function, not just of intensification of emotion, and that is usually where the transgressive elements of the film are located. So the narrative tells one story, and then the song contradicts that narrative line, making it harder, therefore, to dismiss the transgressive elements. So let me read a little bit. It ends up telling us something about the narrative commitments. In her work on the romantic relationships and the place of romance in Indian cinema of the 50s and 60s, Arti Vani, who has asked this, she asks, what kind of an object is the Hindi film song? And then she goes on to say, with a specific lens of 1950s, the modern sensibility of romantic love treats the song sequence as an event that erupts in an audiovisual spectacle of lyrics, music, performance, and mise-en-scene to produce an intense experience, and this is the important thing, of self-fashioning on the part of women. Selfhood and self-fashioning through love. Because she says romance marks the woman's entry into modernity, and then through that, her coming into her own is the film's comment on her self-fashioning, how she makes herself into the modern subject. Ravi Vasudevan, who has written extensively on Indian cinema, he considers it as a paratextual element. He says they are and they are not important, but he points to one important factor. He says that's where the energies, the excessive energies of what the film cannot say get located. And you will see that in the next scene we will see, which is a long one. So songs reveal the interior geographies of its subjects. The lyrics embodied in music, mise-en-scene, and performance assert the right of individuals to experience, feel, and express in the realm of love and eroticism. So what I would like you all to keep this in mind, because the next scene we are going to look at, actually it's a long excerpt from the film. The first thing I want you all to concentrate on is she is again out with Raju, and she wants to, and this is what I mean by not deriding the Devdasi aspect of her identity. She says, will I find anklets somewhere? I want to go dancing. And then that scene moves into her singing about freedom. So I want you all to watch the whole scene. We can talk about it a little bit, and then hopefully that'll sort of incite you all to ask me questions. Yes.
क्यों नहीं? कितने पैसे? 10 रुपए हुए बाबूजी।
चलो।
बाकी पैसे तो ले लें।
पैसे मेरे हैं कि तुम्हारे?
लेकिन मोल तो सिर्फ 10 रुपए है।
आज मेरे लिए अनमोल है। चलो ना, चलो।
अरे बाबूजी। क्या देखता है? राजू, ये नमूना कहाँ से लाए? रोजी, भगवान के लिए घुंघरू उतार के चलो।
क्यों?
क्यों का क्या मतलब?
तुम्हें अगर शर्म आती हो तो सड़क के उस तरफ चलो। अच्छा, तुम भी क्या याद करोगे? अब मदद तो करो।
राजू गाइड नहीं क्या? वही यहाँ क्या कर रहे हैं यार छोकरी के साथ? लगता है अपना काम धंधा छोड़ दिया भैया इसने। कमाल किया यार। देखो 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 देखो।
ए गाइड, हमें यहाँ सैर कराओ। कोई ऐसी जगह दिखाओ कि दिल फड़क उठे। चित्तौड़ कितनी दूर है?
बहुत दूर और गाड़ी नहीं है।
वो गाइड क्या हुआ? गाड़ी के बगैर जिसकी गाड़ी रुक जाए?
मेरी तौबा, मुझसे कसम ले लीजिए, मैं कभी अपने आप को गाइड नहीं कहूंगा। आप होटल वापस चलिए, वरना लोग समझेंगे कि मैं किसी शराबन के साथ घूम रहा हूँ। अरे तू आदमी है क्या? मनखा का ऊपर चढ़ा है? तेरा मोटर तेरा बात क्या है? पंपू को
कुछ बोलोगे भी? कैसे गाइड हो?
मेरी समझ में नहीं आया। कल तक आप लगती थी 40 साल की औरत जो जिंदगी की हर खुशी, हर उमंग, हर उम्मीद पीछे कहीं रास्ते में खो आई है, और आज लगती है 16 साल की बच्ची, भोली, नादान, बचपन की शरारत से भरपूर।
जानते हो क्यों?
क्यों?
फिर
कमाल की डांसर है रोजी। सब इतना हुनर है तो आपने नाचने को छोड़ दिया?
क्या बताऊं, मार्को का ख्याल है नाच गाना बाज़ारी औरतों का पेशा है।
ऐसी नेक ख्यालों वाले आदमी का ऐसी गुनी डांसर से मेल कैसे हो गया?
दूसरा रास्ता क्या था? माँ खानदानी देवता सी, बेटी को उस माहौल से निकालती तो कैसे? किस्मत देखो, सामने आया भी तो मार्को। मुझे अपनाया, मेहरबानी की, घर की बहू बनाया, एहसान किया। इतना बड़ा मकान, इतने नौकर, इतना पैसा, इतना नाम, इतना आराम
और इतना प्यार।
हाँ, इतना प्यार।
जमाना वो नहीं रहा रोजी, जबकि औरत घर की दासी समझी जाती थी, रोती थी, तड़पती थी, सहती थी, लेकिन हाय तक न करती थी। जमाना वो भी नहीं रहा कि जब कोई छोटा इसलिए माना जाता था कि छोटी जाति का है, छोटे घराने में पैदा हुआ है। मेरा बस चलता तो मैं मार्को साहब को साबित करके दिखा देता कि तुम्हारी जाति कितनी ऊंची है।
मेरी
कलाकार भान नहीं होते हैं, आज इज्जत वाले भी उनकी इज्जत करते हैं। उदय शंकर ने दुनिया में नाम कैसे कमाया? अपने नाच से। और शांता राव और बाल सरस्वती और
बड़े बड़े नाम लेते हो राजू कि मेरी नसें फड़कने लगती है।
तुमने कभी कोशिश ही नहीं की, वरना कौन जानता कि शायद तुम्हारा नाम सुनकर भी लोगों की नसें फड़कने लगती।
नहीं नहीं, मेरी ऐसी तकदीर कहाँ।
तकदीर खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे, बता तेरी रजा क्या है। अगर हिम्मत है, हुनर है, लगन है, शौक है, तो जो कुछ नामुमकिन है मेरे सामने आए।
क्यों ना मार्को से एक बार फिर बात करो।
Of course, the talk with her husband doesn't go well, and she does leave him. But I wanted to capture several things through this. The song makes explicit what the narrative trajectory should be. One of the critics I read said, songs actually tell you the director's intention, whereas the film is about society's intentions. So I don't want to set it up as a dichotomy, but I certainly want to recognize that songs are integral. You know, what could not be said in a dialogue is said through the song, and her freedom can get established that way. Her independence can get established that way. And I just wanted to note one thing before I open it up for questions. This scene comes not even halfway through. That means a good part of the film is about Rosie's public career and about her self-fashioning in some ways. So I'll stop there and open it up for discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Anuradha Needham. Your thoughts and introspection on the movie The Guide, based on R.K. Narayan's book, provided us insights to help us understand the role of cinema in providing empowering portrayals of women in India in the 60s. Now the floor is open for questions.
The more you tell me, the better off I am, because I'm just started this chapter. So any comments you make will be grist to the mill of my chapter. So please, encourage me in the effort.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a question. My name is Ryan Robinson. I just wanted to know, in the English version of The Guide, as the story progresses, Rosie, when she at first dances with Indian traditional music, throughout when the story progresses, she starts, at least the background music is more westernized than it is traditional. So I wanted to know your thoughts about it.
First and foremost, I haven't seen the English version.
Oh.
I've only seen parts of the English version. I am told that the English version was very much directed with an eye to a Western audience. And although it must have retained some parts, I don't know what it retained or not. I focus on the Hindi version of it. Yeah.
Just an appreciation for the dance master, whoever choreographed the dance, the snake dance. Because you could see it very distinctively. When Waheeda Rehman dances, it's all Bharatanatyam mode. The adavu, the leg work, and the hand gestures. Everything is from the Bharatanatyam. But at the same time, the woman, the village woman who dances, absolutely a folk dance woman. So they were able to, show it so clearly. That's something I thought that was a very good way of choreographing a dance sequence in a movie. Second one, when she wore that anklet, wearing high heels, a big contrast. That's why it sort of captures draws the attention of everybody when she was walking about. I thought that was good.
And you will notice in both cases, the men are kneeling at her feet. And so she occupies. The snake dance is sort of, I wasn't sure whether I should include it, but I included it for this reason, because it begins by the village woman enticing her, as if she's recognized a fellow traveler. And then Waheeda Rehman sort of says, me, and then she gets up and starts. And then they become equals as they dance. And they exchange, but by the end, Waheeda Rehman is the predominant, Rosie is the predominant sort of figure. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, Dr. Anu, I'm Chris. I was wondering, especially when you mentioned that R.K. Narayan did not really, he was really dissatisfied with the film version of the guide. I was wondering if the film really stripped off the aura as in the aura that Walter Benjamin in his essay, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction says, if the film really stripped off the aura from the book, the guide, especially when we have different versions and it was presented in different, different audience in different ways. So do you really think that films, especially the guide, really stripped off the aura from the book, the guide? Thank you.
So there are 3 or 4 huge topics in your question, and I'm very grateful that you've asked it. Adaptation in different mediums is always, one of the things that people have started saying about adaptation and translation across the board is that you produce a new work. It's never the work that you began with. I think here the important thing is R.K. Narayan was the author with standing, and he expected to be respected as the author with standing. And what happened was, in the process of negotiation, and this didn't just happen with the Hindi film, it also happened with the American version, they had a different idea about how they wanted to present India. So R.K. Narayan has always done Malgudi, right? The village life, the sort of Gandhian ideal. That did not match the American version, but that also did not match the Navketan version of what India is. Because they thought of India in more cosmopolitan terms, as urban, as modern, and so on and so forth. So for them, that shift had to do with not wanting it simply to be about the village, simply to be about a small town hustler. And so you could say, yes, it violates the aura of the book. Simultaneously, you could say, in my view at least, it makes something better of the book than Now, people will disagree about that because the heightened sort of melodramatic aspect of the film upsets them. I love this film, but I found the book quite boring to read, and I resisted it a long time. I read it again just before writing this version of the paper. I think the book is readable, and it does a lot of things. It does some of the same things the film is trying to do, but the film is able to highlight certain features and make certain things important in a way that mattered to me. For example, Rosie's story, as opposed to Raju's story. Right.
I am not an art student, but I need to ask this question. The R.K. Narayan traditionally goes against established norms. And in this case, the Devdasi tradition was a norm. Yeah. And typically it was Brahmin women who were, and a good example is, our singer from this town, M.S. Subbulakshmi, who came from the very tradition and, moved on to become the greatest singer. And is he trying to say, break these traditions? Or trying to say, break these traditions? Or is he trying to portray the patriarchal society is the cause of this mess? Where does the truth lie?
I think he's doing both. Because it is a Hindi film, you get a sort of a negotiated settlement. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was made for Malgudi.
Yeah.
The book was written very much in Malgudi, which is a...
So you're talking about R.K. Narayan, not the film?
The film is a depiction of...
I see what I get it. I don't know, because later in life, Devanand said he was upset that R.K. Narayan was upset. So it's hard to parse, but I think at the moment of its making, there is a particular energy that the Navketan brand brings to the novel. That is not the energy that belongs to R.K. Narayan's film. And so I can understand R.K. Narayan's disappointment. But I think if R.K. Narayan was writing now and living now and had read all the stuff on translation and adaptation and how things, he may have developed a different view. He also thought of the characters in a different way. For him, Marco is a nice man. He's looked after Rosie, he's given her a respectable household and this and that. The film makes a villain out of him. Because maybe the film wants Rosie to be the sympathetic character. But the film also wants to emphasize that patriarchy can be oppressive, that he constantly reminds her of how he made her respectable. Whereas Raju constantly, there are two men involved in Rosie's crafting. And Raju's is the modern one. You do what you want to do. You become the individual. Marco is you live at home and be the good middle class subject. So I think there's a difference in the way they see the world. And that makes a huge difference in the way the film. Yeah.
Thank you for inciting such thoughtful discussions. Now I would like to request you to remain on stage for the book launch.
Nairji has always been passionate about the cause of the marginalized. He used to sensitize the eager students through the reading and discussion of the literature of the marginalized. The vulnerable existence and uncertain future of the occupants and laborers of Manjolai estate has been a subject of animated discussion for more than a year now. Bearing the identity only in terms of numbers, Manjolai 1349 கீழ் 2 என்னும் நான், first serialized in Ananda Vigidan and published as a book just 3 days ago, is a heart-rending account of the laborers who look back at the green, beautiful hills they could once call home. The author is none other than the lawyer Robert Chandrakumar, son-in-law of Nairji. Mr. Robert is a voracious reader and an author of 4 books. We invite Robert to come up to the stage for Madurai's SCILET's launch of the book. We request Dr. Anuradha Needham, who has always been passionate about resistance and a strong advocate for the rights of the underprivileged, to release the book. We request Mr. Tulsi Raj to receive the first copy.
Now it's time to honor the dignitaries. I call upon Mr. Shantama Nair and Sabida Nair to come on stage to honor Dr. Anuradha with a small memento. Now I call Dr. Shyamala, former professor of economics, to come on the stage to honor Mr. Larry Needham with a small memento. Now I call upon Dr. Paul Jaker, the professor and head of the postgraduate research department and the Dean of International Study Abroad, to come forward to honor Dr. David Plotkin. Call upon Dr. John Paul Anbu to come forward and honor Mr. Simon Plotkin with a small memento. Once again, we would like to extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the Principal and Secretary of American College, Dr. M. Dhavamani Christopher, for his continued support in all the activities of SCILET. We will also like to thank the Vice Principal, Dr. Martin David, and Bassa, Dr. Beulah Ruby Kamalam, for their support in SCILET activities. Thank you for the students' participation from the from the American College. We would like to thank Dr. Paul Jaker and Dr. Ravi for encouraging the students' participation from the postgraduate and undergraduate Department of English. We would like to thank Dr. Subhatra Devi from the Tyagaraja College for sending the students from Tyagaraja Arts and Science College. We would like to thank the Lakshmi School students who have come here, and also the students from Lady Doak College, both from the self-finance and from the aided program. Thank you one and all for being here. Let us meet again in August for the next SCILET activity. Thank you one and all.